So here we have it. One of my favorite kind of videos to do. Let's talk about Transformers and finance. Let's talk about Hasbro's second quarter report for 2019. And I like talking about this kind of stuff because it really fleshes out what's going on behind Transformers and gives us a little bit of a crystal ball of what they plan to do in the future in relation to the brand and everything around it. And the cool thing about this is that not only do we talk about Transformers, but we look at the other stuff that Hasbro's doing. And I know a lot of times, and specific websites related to Transformers sometimes ignore those other brands, but you really have to pay attention to those because those are always a strong indicator, too, of where Hasbro is going when it comes to Transformers in relation to those other brands. I mean, you can't talk about the Transformers TCG without looking at what's going on with Magic the Gathering. You can't talk about Transformers in video games when you look at what they're doing with their other gaming brands. So it's something that you got to pay attention to the big picture. And what I'm going to do is, because of almost all the websites, and no offense to them, but all the websites were really just showing some of the specific information to Transformers, I'll include in the description of the segment here, and I think I'll put it in the comments too, I'll include the link to the whole package. And it's a lot of stuff to read through, and there's a lot of technical jargon for a lot of people, but for people who really know finance, it's a really interesting read in what's going on with Hasbro on a global scale, on a domestic scale, and in relation to all their brands. And I mean, let's be real, all of us here are Transformer fans, but we're also fans of other brands, whether it be Star Wars or Marvel or trading card games. So it also gives us a little outlook at all those other things too. So let's dive right into this. So the first thing that they talk about, again, in relation to Transformers, but everything else really, is that they have a obsession right now with long-term growth, which is something that makes me really happy in the sense that they're looking right now at focusing on a growth over the long term rather than big shots in the short term. And that's something that I've been kind of seeing from them for a while now. A lot of times people, whenever there's a line of whatever, whether it be, Combiner Wars or Siege or even like in the case of, let's say, Studio Series, people always have their list right away. Well, why don't they do this? Why don't they do that? Well, it's because they want to have a long-term game with this. Why give all the Pretender shells when you could sell them to you over a span of 5 years? Which makes sense. You can't do everything at once. Otherwise, the worst thing happens is you do everything at once. And then what do you do for the next year or the year before that? You start repeating characters. You start repeating and doing the same thing. And that's one thing I don't want. I don't want to have to have 50 different Optimus Primes. And Lord knows we already do. We already have so many to begin with, but we don't need to have so many of the same character over and over. So it's something that's, nice that they're talking about it. They said that the plans of profitable growth is continuing. They have a lot of they hit a lot of profit this year, which is quite fascinating, actually. I mean, let me just pull up the deep numbers here. So in Canada and the USA, it's 14% up just in the second quarter. It's up quite a bit, their profits, and they attribute it, they're saying here, specifically to in relation to the Transformer side of things, and this is very fascinating, specifically to the Bumblebee movie stuff. And I guess they lump in Studio Series in that. In that movie stuff was their biggest growth. Now, they don't mention Siege, maybe because it's still too early to call. And they don't mention, but here's the ones that they don't mention. They don't mention Cyberverse, which is, I've always had a feeling that Cyberverse has been kind of weird from a toy sales standpoint. I know that the show is controversial in itself, that it's the first time that really Transformers has gone for that short format storytelling for a main line. So that's the first thing that made a lot of people kind of nervous. And I mean, I've talked about it blue to the face on the podcast already about how it's hard to tell a story in 10 minutes. And, you have, like I've always said, you have momentum at the beginning of an episode, you have momentum at the end of an episode, and, that's 2 minutes each just for that. And then that only really gives you a good 5 to 7 minutes to tell a story. and you have to rapid fire it because you can't have a moment to even have a little bit of character development unless it's like, written between the lines in a lot of ways. So it's been something that's been really difficult, and I don't want to say that it's affecting toy sales, because I know that the other side of the coin is that the Cyberverse toys aren't really I don't want to say that good, but up to snuff to what we expect from our mainline stuff. When you look at the past mainline Transformers series, whether it be the Robots in the Skies 2.0, which started slowly going in that direction of Cyberverse's engineering, but the ones before that, Transformers Prime and Animated, and I know that just naming those two, we're already just jumped almost 10 years back because, Animated was 2008. But it's kind of a shame to see how much the mainline cartoon series' toy lines, accompanying toy lines, have slid so much, where we have to rely on nostalgia brands like Siege and movie toys to be the ones that have the better engineered toys. And I understand Hasbro kind of has this new MO on how they approach, age groups and what each age group is, corresponding to which brand. But I mean, some of their best years of sales were during 2008, 2009, some of their best sales. Now, granted, that's a lot of it had to do with Revenge of the Fallen's financial success, regardless of how you feel about the movie. But a lot of it had to do with that, and the toys were just as complex as ever. I understand, there's a lot of layers to this to read, in that it's like, well, plastic sales, and they want to keep stuff simple, but they want to keep up their profits for their CEOs and their shareholders. Yeah, I get it. It's a hairy area. But it is a shame. It is a shame what it is today, and the fact that something like Cyberverse doesn't even make a mark after the second quarter report, even though that's something, as opposed to Siege. Siege doesn't make a mark on it because it's still early. Cyberverse has had some time to marinate now, and it's not making even a dent. They bring up that globally, unfortunately, they're down 1%. Now, it's only 1%. But the fact is that it didn't go up at all, is kind of unfortunate. I think that it's just that Transformers as a brand worldwide, while it does have an impact with certain people and stuff like that, it just, there's just so many other things that are popular around the world. I mean, the one thing that, as an anime fan, you go to South America, and stuff like Saint Seiya and Dragon Ball are religion over there. You go to Europe, and you have a whole different, market of stuff too that's popular. And look, yes, Transformers is popular in Europe, but I'm talking about other stuff that could just dwarf Transformers in popularity and Hasbro's footprint over there. And then when we're talking Japan, that's not even Hasbro. It's Takara Tomy and their sales reports. So that's a whole other animal altogether. And when you're talking Japan, you're talking, hey, there's Bandai over there. There's a lot of other companies. There's a whole different action figure market over there. So it's a whole other animal. So you can't even talk about Japan and China. We'll get into China afterwards when we get to another interesting slide. But then they break down into categories of success and what is working and what isn't working, or as they call it, category performance. And so, again, their franchise brands are up 14%. So what is that? That's Transformers, that's Star Wars, that's Marvel, that's My Little Pony, that's anything that's their brands. Then you have partner brands. Again, that also falls into Star Wars, that falls into Marvel. That's the stuff that they also they kind of like co-own with stuff. And it's only up 3%. That's not a shocker to me, because the people that enjoy Star Wars, the people that enjoy these Marvel movies and stuff like that, I'm talking like the non-toy collectors, they're less likely to go out and buy product of this from Hasbro. A lot of Star Wars, fans who just go to see the movies, or Marvel people that go to see the movie, they don't run out and buy a Marvel Legends figure. They don't go out and buy. I mean, just the sales numbers, like stuff that was going on clearance from the major Marvel movie stuff. I mean, it's kind of sad. Look, I like the Marvel movies, but I can't deny that Captain Marvel toys were going on mega clearance. I can't deny that some of the Infinity War Endgame kind of stuff just wasn't finding its audience. Yeah, for every, there's the Marvel Legends stuff that's doing well, but the bulk product, the stuff, the masks, the role play items, a lot of that stuff was kind of falling flat, unfortunately. And so that stuff in relation, and again with Star Wars, it's only up 3%. It's still up. That's great. Didn't go down, but it's a lot less than last time. And it's just an effect of those brands where, again, the franchise brands that they own. What's like going back again to those franchise brands? There's a lot of good stuff in there that they own, again, and that includes us Transformer fans. And we love our product and we buy those products. So in any shape or form, whether it be, Siege toys, whether it be Cyberverse and stuff like that, but that also lumps in My Little Pony and everything else too. So just to like kind of separate what those two are. Now then we have Hasbro Gaming. Now Hasbro Gaming is down 8%, but again, you have to keep in mind what's in there. While Magic the Gathering had a very good year for Hasbro, they have a Netflix series that's going to be coming soon. They're really going to be focusing on Magic the Gathering and stuff like that. That also includes their board game division, which, let's be honest, board games are kind of going the way of the dinosaur when it comes to the modern era. That includes, other stuff like that, including the Transformer TCG. And I've had my own speculation with the Transformer TCG that it's finding success, but not as much success as Hasbro has hoped, because most trading card games that are new, that are outside of the Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, and Magic, they usually kind of fall flat after the first couple of years. Now again, the game is still fresh. It only has been around for like a good, let's say, I want to say like 12 months or so, really, that it's had a good time to really show itself. I mean, it's been around a little longer than that, but 12 months really is its bulk now of measurement of success. And it's not busting down doors, and it's having difficulty because it had a slow start in international countries. They couldn't get the cards out in certain countries because of language issues and stuff like that. It really was just a United States launch. So I can't blame it completely, but the problem is that it's not it, and it doesn't surprise me, being a TCG player my whole life. It doesn't surprise me that it's not finding humongous success. But it is floating by. And Hasbro, especially right now, saying how they're going to be really focusing on Magic and its growth for the future from a digital standpoint and a tabletop standpoint, along with the Netflix series, says a lot to me about where they're going to probably be focusing on the TCG. And, and Hasbro, within that, they also have Pokemon. Pokemon's in there too, but Pokemon always is just printing money for them. They're just always doing just fine with that. But it's, again, that 8% down might be contributed to the board game stuff, and I hope it has nothing to do with the Transformer TCG. Unfortunately, that's not broken down here. Maybe because they just want to have a good positive face right now on it. And on the emerging brands, 28% up. And this is the Power Rangers. This is their new stuff that they got just recently. Power Rangers, due to their Lightning series, has been killing it and doing very well, and anyone who's a Power Ranger fan could attest to this, that they really, Hasbro has really done some good for the Power Ranger brand in the short time that they've had it, since Bandai pretty much stepped out of the American market. That's really what I want to say about that from the category standpoint. Now let's go to the slide of currency around the world and where the money's coming from. And this is where, again, it's very important to take a note. 62% of the money that they make comes from the United States. 62. Canada, 2%. Now, granted, Canada's population is just a fraction of that of the United States, but only 2% comes from Canada. But here's the number that's really important. Really important. Now, I'm talking about Canada being only 2%, and Canada's population could fit inside California. But China, they've only made 1%. Again, China, 4.4 billion people, only made 1%. And then it just goes across, like Mexico, 5%. British countries, 3%. Russia, 2%. Brazil, 2%. Brazil, Russia, Mexico, Australia, all of them more than China. European, but mind you, that's a whole continent. It's not Canada, but European is 14%. So that's kind of the with the euro. So, but there's a lot of net revenue coming from Europe at least. So that's a good sign. Although it does include a lot of countries. So the United States still is the primary currency of money that's being made for them. So that's something that, again, is a reflection. And again, Japan doesn't even make this list. It's probably in that 7% other over there. It's something to consider that Hasbro still sees that their primary buying power comes from the United States. And again, I think that 2% Canada isn't too bad when you think about how much of I think if you do a little bit of an adjustment of population, I think it's just about right, if anything. Because look, we have TF Cons in Canada, we do just fine. But I mean, at the same time, again, our population is considerably less than the United States. So it's something where I think like I said, if we could make a graph that's a little more of an adjustment, it would make a lot more sense. Where the China one is the one that hits, because China, it's not a population thing. You know what I mean? It's something. It's just they don't have a foothold there. Anyways. So that's something that really shows a lot of where the success is and everything. And I guess the one good news with that is where they're probably going to focus their markets and stuff, which is a good thing, which is a very, very good thing. The only flip side of it that I could say, the contrarian answer would be, well, maybe they might look at China and go, well, we got to work harder there then because of how small it is. But I think that this is a good sign for at least for American fans that their brand isn't going to be going overseas anytime soon exclusively due to just how strong it is there. But who knows? They might take a different approach. The last thing that I just want to bring up is they talked about, again, how they're looking forward and positively to the War for Cybertron Netflix series. Netflix is really going to be a future platform for Hasbro for marketing their products. Again, because we have the Magic the Gathering Netflix series, which they're banking on, and now we have this Transformer one. I'm really hoping that this might be a good venue, a good platform to tell a story, tell the story that we want to hear, get people excited, because that's the reality is that while they are a toy company, they need those 30-minute commercials. And I know that sounds silly, but they need people to, like, people who got excited about animated toys from watching the show. You know, the engineering is great on animated toys. The design is unique, but again, people were questioning animated when they saw it visually initially, because it wasn't about the visuals and the engineering. It was about the storytelling that brought people in and bought those products. It's the same thing with Transformers Prime. The engineering was just fine, the toys were just fine, but it really was the show that made people want to own specific toys and products. And I think that Cyberverse hasn't had enough time to really make an impact with people, and the toys aren't that great. So if you don't make an impact, on the TV screen or the computer screen, and then you bring people to the stores and there's a second blow to the stomach because the toys aren't that great, you're going to have a lot of difficulty moving your brand. And so it's something that Siege has success regardless of any kind of supplemental material. Granted, you could argue, the IDW comics are using those designs, and at the same time, in some smaller extent, some of those past Machinima series were also using some of those designs from the previous generation series. But honestly, no offense to IDW or the Machinima series, but I mean, those two were barely something that was making a difference. The comic industry is not selling the numbers they were, and the Machinima series really didn't get as many eyes as they thought they did. So it really was just fans like, oh, I really like this character, I really like this design, and buying the toy regardless of, the material related to those characters from Generations lines comes from what has existed before. You're buying, Leader Class Evolution Optimus Primal, Optimal Optimus, not because of how he was in the Machinima series. You were buying it because of what you remember 25 years ago from Beast Wars. And this applies to everything with Siege today. If you're buying that Cybertron, Siege Leader Optimus Prime, you're remembering a 2006 series, Galaxy Force/Cybertron series. You're not banking on any kind of recent material. But it would be cool to have something that uses those designs, and then people who are hesitant on, let's say, Micromasters watch a Netflix series and go, oh, I like Micromasters now. I like them because of how they're depicted in this Netflix series, not by how they're depicted in a Marvel comic all those years ago or a Japanese Victory in Zone anime. So it's something that they're going to be focusing a lot more on. Netflix is going to be a very important thing. And again, because of Magic and Transformers both being on Netflix, they're probably going to be looking at it as a very important future digital venue to put out their product and say, hey, look at what we create. And that's just those two. They're going to have it with Star Wars and a lot of stuff. And and not to mention with Disney, with their emerging streaming service, who knows what the future will bring for Transformers in relation to that, but it's going to be an important one to pay attention to. And that's all I'm going to really talk about here. I don't know how long I've been ranting now, for probably about 20 minutes or so, but it's a lot of stuff to think about. I want to hear your opinions on this. Again, I'm going to link all these slides and stuff. You could read through them and make your own conclusions. But it's looking good for Transformers in the future. I think the only stuff that I could really take from it negatively is it looks like Cyberverse is not hitting, on the head as hard as they thought they were. And it looks like the TCG, although maybe not, it's hard to say. I don't have the specific numbers, but maybe the TCG isn't as doing well as we thought it was doing. But that's about it, really. Everything else is looking golden, whether it be the studio series, the Siege stuff, and everything else is just in the pluses. So let me know what you think about all of this.